The hangar doors at North Island don't so much open as retreat, rolling back with a clatter that lets the morning light slide in across the concrete. Sea air blows in behind it. Salt, cold iron, a faint hint of avgas. Inside, parked between familiar shapes with stars and bars on their flanks, sits something that does not belong here. The airplane is small, almost dainty compared to the stubby Wildcats and hulking patrol planes. Its wings are long and slender, almost glider-like. The cowling is tight, wrapped around the radial, like someone couldn't stand wasted space. The cockpit canopy is narrow, the fuselage a smooth taper from prop spinner to tail. The paint is a tired, chalky green-grey that looks like it has known too much weather and not enough hangar. Red meatballs on the wings and fuselage have been crudely overpainted. On the tail, someone has brushed on a white star with a blue circle, because you don't roll anything onto the ramp here without a US marking, even if everyone in the building knows what it really is. A captured Mitsubishi A6M2, A0. For a year now, American pilots in the Pacific have been sending home one sentence over and over again, wrapped in combat reports and half shouted over mess tables. It turns inside anything. At first, someone back in the States always shrugs. There are excuses. The pilots were green. The odds were bad. The enemy had altitude, or surprise, or both. But the reports keep coming. From Wake, from the Philippines, from Java, from Coral Sea and Midway. Zeros pitching up into the vertical, from speeds that shouldn't allow it. Zeros cutting a circle inside Wildcats like someone drew them that way on a chalkboard. Zeros hanging on the edge of a stall that never seems to arrive. Legends are easy to tell and hard to act on. You can't brief a rumor. You can brief a test report. The miracle, if you can call it that, comes in June 1942 in a rain-swept bog on a Kutan island in the Aleutians. A pilot named Koga, hit in the oil system by flak near Dutch Harbour, tries to save what he's flying by performing the same maneuver any aviator would. Get the wheels down, aim for something flat, make the best of it. The flat turns out to be deceptive. The Zero's wheels hit hidden muskeg and grab. The aircraft's nose digs in, flips, snaps the pilot's neck. The airplane, instead of shredding itself into aluminum confetti, stays largely intact. Nose canted into the earth. Wings twisted but not broken. Engine bruised but not ruined. The wreck sits for weeks, unseen, until a PBY crew spots the outline on a routine patrol, and somebody back at Dutch Harbour realizes what that outline means. A salvage team lands in a wind that seems to come from 3 directions at once. They slog through soggy tundra, rope the Zero, and coax it onto a makeshift sled. The airframe protests, but it comes away in one piece. Every foot they drag it is a foot away from the front line, and a foot closer to men who speak the language of airloads and stall margins. From Dutch Harbour it goes by seaplane to the States, then by train, then by truck, until it ends up here, Naval Air Station North Island, San Diego, the place where rumors get weighed on scales that don't lie. The mechanics fall on it like curious wolves. They have seen photos, silhouettes on recognition slides, little chalk outlines in briefings. None of that quite matches the feeling of putting a hand on the actual wing. It flexes more than they expect. The metal skin is thinner than they like. They look for armor and don't find it. They rap knuckles against the metal around the cockpit where their own fighters carry plate. Nothing. The fuel tanks? No self-sealing liners. If a bullet goes in, fuel comes out, air goes in, and pretty soon the whole thing is a Roman candle. The landing gear legs look spindly. Good enough for coral strips maybe, but not the kind of thing that forgives sideways landings. They start measuring. Wingspan, a little over 39 feet. Area, big. Do the math. Divide the airplane's weight by that area, and the number that comes out for wing loading is low, significantly lower than the F-4F Wildcat that most Navy fighter pilots are flying right now. Low wing loading means low stall speeds, and a smaller turn radius at a given load factor. It means you can carve tighter circles down at speeds where other airplanes have to start worrying about falling out of the sky. The control surfaces are generously sized. The ailerons, covering a good portion of the outer wing, are fabric covered. The rudder is big and clean. The elevator is broad, with a long moment arm from the tail. The whole thing looks like it was built by someone who worshipped at the Church of Light and Lift. They pull the engine, a Nakajima Sakai, and lay its guts out on tables. It's tidy, compact. They tear down the float-type carburetor, and somebody frowns. Float carbs do not love negative G. If you shove the nose down hard enough, Fuel sloshes away from the jets, and the engine coughs or quits. That's one weakness. They log it. They log everything. Then comes the part no amount of measuring can shortcut. Someone has to fly it. The first time Lieutenant Commander Eddie Sanders walks around the Zero, he tries not to let the mechanics see him falling, a little bit in love. Test pilots are supposed to be clinically detached, part aviator, part instrument. But flyers are human beings, and any human being who loves airplanes can't help but appreciate the lines of this one. There's an economy to it. No bulges, no unnecessary fairings. The canopy frame is thin. The view seems like it will be good. The wing fillets are clean. It is, from a stability standpoint, almost too pretty. He runs his hand along the leading edge, then over the barrel of the wing root guns. He has read enough reports from the Pacific to know that these 7.7s and 20mm cannon have killed men wearing his uniform. Today they are blind. The gun bays have been cleared and the gun safed or removed. If this aeroplane kills anyone today, it will be him, and it will be by accident or stupidity, not by design. He climbs the wing root, steps into the cockpit, and settles into a seat that feels narrower than it should. Japanese designers built this space for smaller bodies. Still, the ergonomics make sense. Throttle quadrant to the left, prop and mixture levers just ahead, trim wheels where your hands expect them. The instrument panel is busy but not chaotic. Airspeed indicator in knots, altimeter in meters, engine gauges labeled in a script he can't read, but whose needles tell familiar stories. The stick is straight, simple, capped with a grip that feels handcrafted rather than stamped. They have translated the important placards. They have wired up some additional instrumentation for the test. Strain gauges, recording airspeed, load factors, control forces. On the ground nearby, engineers will watch needles and scribble numbers, while his job is to translate those numbers into words pilots will respect. The engine start is straightforward. Primer strokes, mixture set, mags hot. A ground crewman swings the prop through, and the Sakai coughs once, twice, then catches on the third blade, settling into a surprisingly smooth idle. It's not as throathy as a Pratt & Whitney. It's got a higher, almost eager note. At 800 RPM, the whole airplane trembles like a thin dog. Bring it up to 1200 and it smooths out, the vibration moving into a hum that he feels in the seat and through the soles of his feet. Taxiing out, he gets his first taste of the handling. The tail wheel is free castering just like the report said, but the rudder takes authority quickly. With power and a light foot, the Zero weaves down the taxiway in easy S-turns to clear the nose. There's no sense of mass fighting him. The brakes are there, a little grabby, but he barely needs them. At the end of the runway, he lines up, noses into the wind, checks the instruments one more time. Oil temp, cylinder head temp, fuel pressure, tachometer steady. He notches in a bit of right rudder trim out of habit. Most single-engined prop fighters swing left as the prop digs in. The Wildcat will try to run off the left side of the runway if you're asleep. He doesn't know yet what this Japanese prop wash will do. He advances the throttle smoothly. The Sakai responds without hesitation, winding up to climb power with a snarl. The airplane surges forward, and immediately he feels it, lightness. The tail comes up quickly with just a touch of forward stick. The nose steadies. A dash of right rudder holds the centerline. He glances at the airspeed indicator, sees the white needle slide through 60, 70, 80 knots. There's no sharp break point where the airplane suddenly decides to fly. It feels like it's been wanting to leap off the ground from the moment it started rolling. At something under 80 knots indicated, the main wheels go soft and then leave the pavement entirely. It climbs away as if offended by the mere idea of being near the ground. Gear up, flaps up. He raises the nose to a comfortable climb angle and watches the VSI needle peg itself optimistically. The Zero climbs, not like a rocket, but with a steadiness that makes the Wildcat feel tubby by comparison. The stick forces are light. There's no sense of hauling the nose through the sky. It's more like adjusting the pitch of a pointer. He circles up over the bay, stepping up to altitude in spirals, while the ground falls away and the world shrinks to aeroplane and air. Initial impressions. The controls are harmonized beautifully. Roll is crisp. Pitch is sensitive, but not twitchy. Rudder is effective. A small input produces a noticeable yaw that can be blended into turns easily. The aeroplane feels eager, like a very well-trained but excitable dog. He levels off around 10,000 feet, throttles back, and begins to probe the edges. Gentle turns left and right. Slow rolls. He notes how little aileron deflection is needed to bank. He kicks rudder to see how much the nose swings for a given foot pressure. He eases back on the stick to feel out the onset of buffet. Then he starts to slow down deliberately. 200 knots indicated. He holds altitude with power, letting the speed bleed away, trimming as he goes, so he isn't holding a constant pull. The nose rides just above the horizon. At 160 knots, the air feels thick. The controls in most fighters would start to feel soggy here, the ailerons losing their bite as airflow dwindles. In the Wildcat, at this speed you can turn, but you have to be careful. Pull too hard and she'll mush and drop a wing, and you'll find yourself in an incipient spin before you know it. He banks the 0-30 degrees and gently pulls. Not a yank, just a steady, increasing back pressure, with a touch of coordinated rudder, the kind of textbook turn instructors dream of, and students rarely deliver. The response is startling. The nose comes around, not sluggishly, not reluctantly, but with an almost hungry eagerness. The horizon swings in a smooth, even arc. There is no shudder, no warning buffet, no tendency for the nose to bob. The seat of the pan's feeling is of weight. Yes, the increased G as he asks the wing to earn its keep. But the airplane gives no hint that it's reaching a limit. He glances at the G-meter and sees numbers that would get a student yelled at in a T6. The 0 simply holds. He tightens slightly, easing in another fraction of an inch of back pressure, making sure his feet keep the ball centered. The circle tightens. The nose rates around faster. The world outside compresses into a blur of blue and coastline. If he were chasing another airplane that started this same turn at the same altitude and speed, inside that circle, he realizes his guns would already be walking up its tail. It feels like cheating. Down at this end of the envelope, the wing loading and the airfoil and the control design all gang up in the 0's favor. The lift curve stays smooth. The ailerons stay responsive. The rudder is a willing partner, not a reluctant one. The airplane seems perfectly happy to bend itself around the sky at 160 knots indicated, and below, as long as you are patient and coordinated. It bleeds speed. Yes, no turn like this is free. But it bleeds it gracefully, giving it up to the gods of drag a little at a time, rather than in a sudden rush. He can feel the deceleration in his body, heavier on the seat, a slight change in vibration. But the controls keep working. There is a margin between I am turning extremely hard and the wing has stopped lifting that feels generous compared to what he's used to. The pilot becomes the limiting factor, not the airframe. Then, because no test is complete without seeing how someone can get it wrong, he tries it the ham-fisted way. Same altitude, same airspeed, same configuration. This time he yanks the stick back more aggressively, asking for all the G right now, and he doesn't pay quite as much attention to his feet. He slips a bit, the ball rolling off center. The 0 does not bite his head off. It simply protests. The airflow over the wing tells him it's not pleased, in the universal language of buffet. The nose chatters. One wing threatens to drop. The rudder, if misused, can drag the tail out of line and turn coordinated lift into a partial skid. The airplane says, very clearly, if you insist on this, I will spin. He eases off, nudges the rudder back into line, and the buffet disappears instantly, replaced by that same smooth, obedient carve. The lesson is obvious. This is not a forgiving trainer. It is a precise instrument. Give it gentle, disciplined inputs, and it gives you outrageous performance. Manhandle it, and it will punish you, but only after warning you in a way a skilled pilot can feel and respect. He tries a few rapid reversals at this speed. Roll rate is still excellent at 160. Snap the stick left, then right, blended with rudder, and the airplane flops from bank to bank like it weighs nothing. The nose slices across the horizon with each reversal. You could, he thinks, fight a rolling scissors down here and have all the tools you need to stay in control. You could also rope a heavier, lazier rolling opponent into a fight he'll never escape. Now he does something that feels almost like blasphemy. He imagines a wildcat down here, across the circle. He's flown the F4F. He knows how she feels at 160. If that wildcat tries to match this turn, it will be outside, never closing, bleeding energy faster, working its ailerons harder for less result. In a few seconds, the 0's guns would be pointed at a target that cannot get away by geometry alone. He flies the same turn at 180, then 200 knots indicated, climbing and diving to keep the power settings reasonable, and feels the slope. There is a sweet band down in that 140 to 190 knot range, where the 0 is simply in its element. Below about 240 mil per hour indicated, as the test description will later phrase it. A gentle pull and coordinated rudder give you a circle that feels like cheating. Above that speed, the balance starts to shift. He levels out and pushes the nose down, letting gravity and horsepower team up. The airspeed needle climbs, 220, 240, 260 mil per hour. The controls remain precise, but something changes in his arm. The ailerons are no longer two-finger light. He has to lean a bit more into the stick to get the same roll rate. At 280, the ailerons feel downright heavy. You can still bank and roll, but now it's work. The elevator remains good. Pitch changes are still reasonable. The rudder still has authority to spare, but the roll axis is no longer a carefree toy. The same long, light wing that was a friend at 160 knots becomes a lever with serious aerodynamic loads at 280. He yanks the nose up in a high-speed pull. The G piles on. The wing answers, but he can sense it starting to grumble about the loads. This is not a Corsair or a Thunderbolt, designed to shrug off terminal velocity dives and pull high G recoveries all day. This airframe was optimized for something else: agility at moderate speeds, economy of motion, not brute force speed. He tries a steep dive. 300 mil per hour is indicated. The sound level rises, the engine note blending with wind noise. Control forces grow. The tail feels a little lighter. He does nothing stupid. No violent yanks. No cross-controlled heroics. But the impression is clear. This airplane can dive, but diving is not where it wins fights. It can't push as far into the high-speed regime as American Iron without making the pilot pay in sweat. He probes the stall from straight and level again, this time slower. Flaps up, power back. The brake is gentle, the nose nods. One wing may dip slightly if he lets the ball slide off center, but recovery is immediate with forward stick. Try the stall with flap, with gear, with various power settings. The story never changes. The airplane whispers its discontent before doing anything drastic. It is deadly agile when treated with respect and deadly dangerous to fools who abuse that politeness. He practices negative G pushovers. With a sharp forward shove, the engine coughs in exactly the way the carburetor diagram suggested. Fuel sloshes away from the jets. The mixture goes lean for a heartbeat. The sake stumbles, then catches again as soon as positive G returns. It's a small hiccup, but in a fight, a small hiccup is a lifetime. He grins at the thought. Allied fighters with fuel injection or more tolerant carburetors can use that fact like a lever. Brief negative G to spoil a Zero's aim is not a stunt, it's a tactic. Flight after flight, day after day, the test program builds a picture. Climbs, dives, rolls, snap maneuvers, accelerated stalls, spins, recovery drills. Each test expands the envelope in pencil lines and ink, and each incline translates into words pilots can trust. The pattern that emerges is simple and deadly. Down low in speed, the Zero is everything the room has said, a turn machine. At about 160 knots indicated, with a bit of patience and proper coordination, it carves sustained circles no American fighter then in service can match. Below roughly 240 malapreyas, it's still nimble, still light, still willing to bend its lift vector around so hard that the pilot's neck vertebrae write complaints. Ham-fisted stickwork will get you in trouble, but the aeroplane warns you before it drops you. The Zero doesn't have magic. It has good wings, low weight, and control harmony that flatters skill. Up at higher speeds, the myth loses some of its shine. The ailerons get heavy, the roll rate drops, the structure doesn't love the high dynamic pressures of long, steep dives. Negative G pushes mess with the engine. It has weaknesses, real, exploitable weaknesses. The work now moves from the hangar in the sky to the ready room. Picture a classroom with paint-peeled walls, metal chairs, a faint smell of coffee and sweat. A chalkboard at the front holds the usual scribbles, course headings, rendezvous altitudes, a cartoon some wag has drawn of an instructor. Today, that instructor taps the board to get the room's attention, and then erases everything but one word, Zero. He draws a crude top-down view of two airplanes in a turn. One circle is small, one is larger, concentric. In the center of the small one, he writes, 0 at 160 case. On the larger, U. He explains what Sanders and the others have learned. This thing is light. Its wing is big for its weight. Down in the 140-190 knot range, it lives. Down there, the aeroplane is a monster in a sustained flat turn. Your Wildcat, your P-40, your P-39, you name it, cannot match that without hitting angles of attack you don't want to see unless you have angels on your shoulder. He tells them about the ham-fisted tests, about how the Zero will buffet, wiggle, warn, then spin if you get sloppy. He tells them that Japanese naval aviators are not sloppy. They've been flying this design or its precursors for years. They know the margin. They stay on the right side of it. Then he flips the chalk. He draws another set of symbols. He sketches a straight line diving through, then an arcing path back up. You, he writes on the diving line. Him on a flat circle below. Boom and zoom, he calls it. Drop from above with more speed than the Zero can comfortably handle. Make one slashing pass. Fire a quick, disciplined burst. Don't stick around to admire your work. Don't yank back into a level turn at his altitude and his speed. Use your excess energy to climb back up, trading speed for height. Then turn at leisure and set up another pass. He underlines the word one. One pass, not four, not a prolonged chase where you get seduced into his circle. One. He talks about roll rate at speed, about how a Wildcat or a future Hellcat, with their metal ailerons and stiffer wings, can roll out of plane at 280 mph, when the Zero's pilot will be working hard just to bank. If you need to shake a Zero off your tail, you don't keep the wings level and pull. You roll, change plane, dive, and expect that his roll sluggishness at high speed will work in your favor. He adds a third piece, the negative G cough. If a Zero is latched onto your 6, you can execute a sharp pushover, just enough to unload the wing and bounce into negative G for a heartbeat. Your own engine may grumble, but it won't quit. His will. His guns will bob. His sight picture will smear. That's your opening. Roll, dive, make distance while he's regaining power and composure. Then he walks to the board and writes a number in big figures. 160. He circles it. Hard, chalk, dust flakes onto his shoes. This, he tells them, is his home. If you see this number on your airspeed indicator and you're in a level turn with a Zero, you are in the wrong place. He lets that hang in the stale air. Faces in the room get serious. No one shifts in their chair. He continues. Above 240 mph indicated, it's different. Up there, the Zero's advantage shrinks. Your roll comes into its own. Your dive speed outclasses his. Your structure tolerates higher dynamic pressure. The fight becomes one of energy and attitude, not of raw turning radius. Up there, a Hellcat or Corsair can dictate terms. The problem, in 1942, is that many pilots never made it that far because they kept accepting invitations at 160. So the doctrine shifts. The thackweave, already born from desperate necessity, gets sharpened. Two fighters, crossing paths and constantly turning toward each other, can force a higher angle attack on a pursuing Zero, exposing him to the guns of the wingman, while making it harder for him to sit comfortably in one turning circle. Sections get taught to operate in pairs, to cover each other, to think of geometry as a team sport. Instructors drill into every fresh face the mantra, never flat turn with a Zero, use altitude, use speed, use roll, use brief negative G to spoil his firing solution. Aim not to win a turning fight, aim to never get into one. Somewhere over the Solomons months later, a Wildcat pilot finds himself bounced. He catches the glint of sunlight off a long wing and realizes, in that quarter second that separates theory from survival, that the shape is wrong for anything friendly. A Zero slides into his rear quarter, nose tracking, cannons winking. The old instinct is to haul back on the stick and crank into a hard left turn. Meet turn with turn. Feel the G's stack up and hope that your aim and resolve will win the knife fight. The new instinct, drilled into him by a man with chalk dust on his cuffs, is to do something else. He pushes forward, just a jab. The nose dips. His stomach floats. For a fraction of a second, the airplane goes light. A hint of negative G makes the straps bite his shoulders instead of his hips. Behind him, the Zero's sake hiccups. It's not much, just a cough. But in that cough, the gun platform wobbles. The aim spoils. At the same time, he rolls hard right and feeds in more power, letting the nose spill down toward thicker air. The Wildcat accelerates, its heavier ailerons now in their preferred regime. The Zero, trying to match, finds its controls a little heavier than it wants this far down the speed line, and its engine recovering from the fuel slosh. In seconds, the geometry has changed. The Zero is no longer sitting smugly on his 6. It's off to the side, closing in a way that leaves it exposed to the leader in the section, who has also been briefed on what that chalk circled 160 meant. The leader cuts across, dives and turns the tables, raking the Zero with .50 caliber fire as it tries to rejoin its happy place in the low-speed circle. In another fight, a Corsair dives through a furball at 300 knots. its gull wings flexing as it hauls around in a high G, high-speed turn that a Zero simply cannot match without tearing itself up or running out of aileron. The Corsair makes one fast pass, hammers a Zero in a deflection shot, then zooms up again, refusing to loiter. The pilot admits later that every cell in his body wanted to stay and duke it out. The briefing and the test report in the back of his mind told him to leave. Sometimes people forget. Sometimes they accept the invitation. An American pilot, seeing a Zero start to turn at his level, thinks, just this once, I'll see what happens. He pulls back at 160, feels his airplane mush nearly immediately, the nose bobbing, the outside wing wanting to drop. He fights the buffet, skids, loses more energy. The Zero, inside, clean and patient, comes around. The next voice that pilot hears is not a test officer. It's the roar of cannon shells coming through his fuselage. The captured Zero's value is not that it makes the enemy weak. It doesn't. Japanese pilots flying these machines are still dangerous, still skilled, still capable of killing Allied pilots all the way to the end of the war. Its value is that it makes the enemy specific. You can brief specific. You can write on a board, at around 160 knots indicated, with a gentle pull and coordinated rudder. The Zero can pivot inside anything we own. At speeds below about 240 mil pre, treat level turns with it as lethal. Up at higher speed, play to your own strengths. Don't fight myths, fight numbers. The test program at North Island doesn't just feed Navy squadrons. Its findings flow into Army Air Force's briefing rooms, into the minds of P-38 and P-47 pilots, heading for both Pacific and European theaters, where despite different opponents, the principles hold. Every fighter has a place on the envelope where it can do unfair things. Every fighter has a place where it's clumsy. The Zero taught American flyers to think in those terms about their own steeds. Don't just know your stall speed, know your best rate of turn speed, your corner speed, your roll rate at various dynamic pressures. Know where your aeroplane feels like cheating and where it feels like a grocery cart. For the engineers too, the captured Zero is a data point. Grumman and Vought and Lockheed designers already knew about wing loading and control harmony. They didn't need a Japanese machine to teach them aerodynamics. But seeing a combat-proven airplane that trades survivability for performance this aggressively reinforces the trade-offs they've chosen. Heavy armor and self-sealing tanks mean you don't get that 160-knot magic, but it also means a P-47 can come home looking like it flew through a scrapyard. The lesson isn't copy the Zero. The lesson is respect what the Zero can do and build your tactics and designs accordingly. In the last months of its flying life, the captured Zero is just another airplane on the North Island schedule. It gets pre-flighted, flown, post-flighted, and tucked back into its hangar bay. Test pilots take turns ringing it out, each adding a few more impressions, a few more lines to the reports. By then, the Hellcat is arriving in squadrons. The Corsair is shaking out its own quirks, and American pilots are taking control of the vertical more often than the horizontal. One morning, a test pilot, maybe Sanders, maybe another who has inherited the job, takes the Zero up for a check flight. The sky over San Diego is clear, the bay a soft bite of blue. He climbs to altitude, levels off, and almost as a nostalgic indulgence, pulls it back to 160 knots one more time, and lays into that famous turn. The airplane responds like it always has, carving a circle that feels like someone tightened the laws of physics as a party trick. He feels the G on his body, the steady hum of the engine, the way the horizon whips around the nose. Then he rolls out, pushes the throttle forward, and accelerates. At 260, he rolls it hard, feeling the ailerons stiffen. At 300, he pulls gently into a zoom climb, letting the speed trade for altitude, thinking about all the young men now flying big, rugged American fighters who have been told in plain language when to avoid the urge to do exactly what he just did. Back on the ground, in ready rooms on carriers, and at dugout brief huts on coral atolls, instructors keep drawing the same crude diagrams on boards that will eventually be burned for warmth or used to prop up mess tables. Circles inside circles, arrows diving and climbing, the number 160 underlined twice. They keep saying the same words, never flat turn with a Zero, use boom and zoom, hit once and leave. If you find yourself down at 160 in a level circle with him, recognize that you've already made one mistake, don't make a second. Flying the captured Zero didn't remove the danger. It didn't make the airplane any less fearsome in the hands of a good opponent. What it did was take something that had lived in the realm of myth. It turns inside anything. and put a number on it, a speed, a condition, a place on the airspeed dial. It turned a ghost into a chart. It turned rumour into briefing room rules. And in war, sometimes a number on a chalkboard is all that stands between a young pilot and a mistake he doesn't get to make twice. Subscribe for more untold stories of World War II.